Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee for the review of the premises licence for the Sultan. The first order of business is for the panel to nominate, second, and accept the appointment of chair of the meeting. Could one of the members please make the nomination and the other second? You will need to unmute yourselves to do that.
Yeah, I nominate Martin.
I'll second that.
Okay, and is that accepted, Councillor Welton?
That's accepted.
Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Well, can I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this hearing this morning? It's good to obviously see so many people here. I'll just firstly take through the process about how this hearing will be conducted. I'll ask firstly, obviously, the legal advisor before I start to inform those present that there was a briefing prior to the hearing and for clarification any aspect of the agenda. I'll also ask the licensing officer whether there's any technical issues which need to be brought to their attention. Following that, I will then move to the applicant for the reviews, and I've got Sally McCutcheon, Father Graham Piper, and Councillor Kirsten Galea, who are speaking in terms of that. Following their presentation from each of them or collectively, there'll be opportunity then for the licensee to ask questions of the applicant. That will be followed by interested parties. So people here who have made representations will have the opportunity to ask questions. I know we have a number of them here, and that will be followed by the members themselves. We'll then move on to the licensee. The licensee then will present their case, and I believe we have representatives here from the Sultan this morning. And after they've made their presentation, there'll be an opportunity then for the applicants to the review to ask questions of the licensee, and followed by that there'll also be a question, obviously, if they so wish, the interested parties to this hearing to ask questions if they so wish. There then will be the opportunity for interested parties. I know we've had a number of people who have requested to give statements to the committee, and we will then obviously follow a similar process. The applicant will be allowed to ask questions of the interested parties, licensees, followed by the councillors themselves. There's no statutory authorities who have made representations to this hearing. We'll then go on to closing statements without introducing any new evidence. So the licensee will make a closing statement, and then it will be an opportunity for the applicants to make closing statements as well. And then obviously we will adjourn for private session. I will say, obviously, if I believe that people are being repetitive, I will obviously intervene and obviously ask them not to do so, but also as well, if I feel that their points needs concluding, I will ask as well. But this is the opportunity for all of you to have their say. And following on from that, we will obviously adjourn the hearing, and all parties will be notified within 5 working days of the outcome of this hearing. Is there any points of clarification anybody wants to raise? So obviously, I know it's not, probably doesn't sound the most straightforward process. Fine. I'll then ask, obviously, the legal advisor, is there any points you wish to clarify before we go on to the hearing? We obviously had a pre-meeting beforehand. Is there any points you want to report on, Mr. Bishop?
No, nothing further to add. Licensing subcommittees often will have a chat before the hearing just to tease out any questions that they think they need to ask or issues they have. In this case, they just read the papers and that was it. And obviously any legal advice that I give will be given in deliberations and of course be referred to in any decision notice.
And we have our licensing officer, Tony Hawkes. Is there any technical issues you feel need to be brought to the attention of the committee, whether there's been any withdrawal of objectors or any agreed conditions?
No, Chair, there's been no conditions agreed. What I'd probably like to do is just explain to all people present. I know that the committee members will be aware of how the licensing system works, but it perhaps be useful for everyone else. That the review application is essentially looking at an outside area of the pub, tables and chairs being used at the front. This area is not part of the licensed premises. The licensed premises is shown in your agenda papers on the plan, which is on the printed page 44. And if you're looking at the PDF, that would be page 48 on the electronic file. But the area can be used. It is part of the land owned by the pub. The pub is permitted both on and off sales. People consuming alcohol in this area can be sold alcohol as an off sale to drink. The permitted times for that are 10 a.m. till midnight, Monday to or Sunday to Wednesday, and 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Thursday through to Saturday. There's no conditions on the license that prevent the outside use, and what you're being asked to look at is whether that outside use is causing a nuisance, and if it is, then what steps are necessary to promote the licensing objectives.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the applicant. I've got obviously Sally McCutcheon and Father Graham Piper. I don't know who wants to speak first. Sally McCutcheon.
Hello there, can you all hear me okay?
I can hear you.
So first of all, I just wanted to say Fiona Reid, who was the lead name on the application, intended on being here today, but she needs surgery following an injury and is currently in hospital waiting for her operation. We have prepared a written statement that I will read out, and Graham Piper and I will be available for any questions. We've also invited Councillor Kirsten Gallier to make a short statement as part of our presentation to the committee. So first of all, thank you all for your time in hearing this case. Before we present our case, we would like to just sort of reconfirm that we have never intended nor asked for the whole licence of the pub to be revoked. We support the pub as a local business and acknowledge its successful presence in the local community. We do, however, consider that the addition of outdoor seating for 36 people that directly overlooks our homes is unreasonable. And given that no planning permission was granted for the change and intensification of land use, we welcome the opportunity to find a solution to this situation, which has caused a great deal of stress and has impacted the daily lives of residents over the last 3 months. The location of the pub is not just a quiet residential area, it's a pocket of London that feels for us like a hamlet. Due to the acoustics and layout of the area, there is practically no noise from any nearby roads, and most of the time, all you can hear on the street is birdsong. Indeed, it's common for visitors to comment on how lovely it feels here and how quiet and relaxing it is. Many of the residents have lived here for more than 10 years, and we all chose to live here on account of the quiet, peaceful environment and the friendly, relaxed feel. None of us have ever had cause to make a complaint about disturbance from the pub before. We find it really unfortunate that there was no consultation nor any communication at all with residents prior to the new outdoor seating being installed. The disturbance so far has been caused by anything from 2 to 25 people sat directly outside our homes. The nuisance is caused by the noise of animated conversations, as well as the concern we have of people sitting drinking directly outside our homes with no privacy barriers. In many cases, conversations can be heard word for word inside our properties, as evidenced by the audio recordings that we've submitted. And the decibel readings that we've taken show that noise levels can be around 4 times louder than the average from inside our homes. The disruption is very unpredictable. Sometimes there are a few people sat talking quietly and there is barely any noise, but we never know when there's going to be one loud table or a few groups of excitable people, and when there is noise, we don't feel able to use certain areas of our properties on account of the disturbance. The area is open 7 days a week from 3 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. on weekdays and midday to 9:30 p.m. on weekends. The pub has an existing beer garden with outdoor seating, and in addition, the pub has 2 outdoor tables on the De Burgh Road side of the pub. These 2 tables have always been allowed by the council due to the fact they do not directly overlook anyone's windows. We have no objection to the continued use of the beer garden or these 2 tables that have been in situ for many years. We have submitted documents to show that historically tables have never been allowed by the council on the Norman Road side of the pub on account of the proximity to residents. We've also submitted a record from the planning department that states the number of parking spaces that the pub should have and the importance of reducing the noise impact of the pub for local residents. Finally, we've submitted the title deeds of the pub that state nothing should be erected within 10 feet of the road. We understand the intention of this clause was to prevent nuisance for local residents. We have tried to engage the pub and the brewery to find a solution, but the response has been that the level of noise is not that bad. They have no intention of removing the seating and that we should contact the council if there is an ongoing problem. We acknowledge that the number of people for whom this has negatively impacted is less than the number of patrons who have written in to support the pub. But we feel that this is not a question of the pub's popularity. It is a question of the right of residents to relax privately in their own homes. The pub is a venue that people choose to go to socialise and connect with the community, but when we are inside our own homes, we are not choosing to sit in a pub environment, and yet this is what now happens within our private space. Our position is that the addition of 6 large extra tables that can reasonably seat 36 people directly outside our homes without any noise or privacy barriers is intrusive and causes considerable nuisance. We're grateful for the opportunity for the situation to be considered and hope that a resolution can be found swiftly, as the matter has already escalated beyond what we would have wished. We've coexisted alongside the pub very comfortably for many years, and we request that you consider the imposition inside our homes, where we have a right to live, work and rest without this level of disruption, and that the relevant restrictions to outdoor seating be applied to the pub's licence. Many thanks again for your time. I would now like to ask Councillor Kirsten Gallia to make a short statement.
Morning, can you hear me? So I would like to start with noting that the Sultan has been, and it is, a community asset. It has been allowing the use of its space for meetings by various organizations and groups, as well as hosting fundraising events. Since taking over the pub, the current management of the Sultan has managed to create a welcoming environment that is loved by many locally and further afield. However, there is currently some conflict. As ward councillor, I try to speak with the neighbouring residents to understand the extent of the issue. It is clear that the neighbours living on Norman Road, directly adjacent to and opposite the seating, have been affected by the loss of privacy and noise disturbance at various times of the day throughout the week since the seating has been installed. Whilst the residents on the further side of Norman Road and the Burgh are largely unaffected. None of the neighbours I spoke with would like the pub to lose their licence, including those who are affected. Many have lived happily there for a number of years. However, they would like to be able to return to a peaceful existence and that they expect on a quiet residential road. It's understandable that small bars and pubs such as the Sultan are struggling economically at the moment due to the impact of the pandemic and are trying to find solutions to ease that pressure. And obviously, therefore, that's how the seating happened. But but I would like for the management of the Sultan and the affected residents to sit down and work out a solution to address their concerns, potentially involving an acoustic specialist, and I would be happy to facilitate talks. Thank you.
We'll now go to, does Father Graham Piper want to add anything? You're on mute.
Hello, hi. No, I mean, I think, you know, the statement that Sally read out encapsulates basically how we're feeling about, you know, the situation with the Sultan. I too am very supportive of the Sultan pub. In actual fact, I've been a customer on several occasions, and would not want the pub to lose its license at all. I'm particularly aware of my neighbours and the impact it's having upon their lives. And I think that needs to be understood and appreciated, because I think at the expense of neighbours and what they're experiencing, it seems a little unfair for them to continue to accept the seating as a permanent fixture. I'm a little bit further down De Burgh Road, and when the seating was first put up, certainly late into the evening, I could hear voices when I was sat in my bedroom. Obviously, when you live near a public house, there's bound to be some noise. And I must say that most of the people that I've experienced coming away from the pub late at night have made very little noise. It's not a kind of a racy pub at all. It's a fairly sedate place where people enjoy each other's company, and it's a great facility. But this additional seating has actually caused anxiety and disturbance for local residents. That to me is a concern. And certainly as we go forward and the seating becomes more popular and possibly used more regularly, I think we need to be very careful about you know, how we deal with this situation. My own feeling is that the seating should be removed, and you know, that would be the solution to the problem. But obviously I'm willing, as I'm sure other residents are, to meet and to consult. A little bit disappointed actually that no consultation took place with local residents before that seating was placed there. I mean, it's, you know, blatantly obvious it would have an impact upon local people. And so therefore I sit in solidarity with those who are more, you know, impacted than I am with this particular problem, and the potential for this to, you know, become even more of a nuisance in the local area.
Thank you. We'll now go on to questions. I'll obviously have questions from the respondent, which is the Sultan. Is there any questions you wish to ask of the witnesses? It's not a time for, I've got Gary Robinson here.
Yeah, I just it's
not a time for statement, just questions at this stage.
I'd just like to ask Sally if she was aware that there's been 3 tables on De Burgh Road permanently for over a decade, maybe longer. There isn't 2. There's actually been 3. I wonder if she was aware of that, because part of the complaint has come from one of those tables, and there's quite a lot of the complaint allocated to that area, which has been attributed to the new area.
From my perspective, that area isn't attributed to the complaint in any way, and I don't feel that any other of the applicants or the residents locally feel that that area is a problem. We understand that the tables there, and I apologise if there is 3 and I said 2, we understand that those tables on that side have always been permitted by the council because they don't overlook anyone's properties directly. Our concern is definitely that with the substantial addition of the new seating area on the Norman Road side, it gives the impression that outside of the pub is obviously a welcome place for people to stand, gather, sit, smoke, etc. So from our perspective, the new seating has meant that there has been more people stood outside after the 9:30 cutoff on that side. But we feel, because that has never been a major problem in the past, we feel that that's as a result of the large increased capacity on the Norman Road side.
Okay. And I would just like to ask one further question. I'd like to ask Father Graham Piper and Sally if they were aware that I offered via Ellie Stringer a public meeting at the time when all of these complaints were anonymous.
Yes, we are aware that you offered a consultation. That offer of consultation, however, was taken off the table by your brewery, who told us not to communicate with you any further. Were you aware of that, Mr.
Well, this was and as I said, at that time, we didn't know who we were dealing with, who the complainants were. And that's when I approached Ellie to broker some sort of public consultation. And the brewery wasn't involved at that time.
You received a letter.
Can I just intervene as chair? Obviously, you'll have the chance to obviously respond to any of this. We just obviously at the questioning stage at this time now. And is there any further questions that the licensee? Is it Mr. Robinson? Is anyone else with you this morning?
The company secretary and the owner are with me, Alison Gilbert.
Alison Gilbert, yes.
Just bear with me a second.
Is there any questions anyone else wishes to ask in terms of the licensee? Yeah,
Alison has indicated that she would like to.
Alison, yes. I can't hear.
I think the question's in the chat.
Yeah, we obviously prefer questions to be said orally rather than put in chat. She's actually said she would like to ask a question at this hearing, and obviously the opportunity is now to ask a question. I don't know whether she's online.
Bear with me a second.
Yes.
Sorry. I have Alison with me now.
Hello, I'm sorry, I've had serious technical issues with my computer.
No worries.
I would like to ask a question of Ms. Cutchin. Two things she said. One, that the seating's directly opposite her house. Is it not the case that there's a road and parked cars between the seating area and your house?
Well, yes, we all live on a road, and the pub is directly adjacent to some of the residents that have been affected by this, and directly opposite others. There are obviously sometimes cars on the road parked, and sometimes there aren't.
And you've also said that, sorry, can you hear me? Because we've got
yes,
problem.
I can hear you, yes.
You've also said that the council has not previously allowed there to be seating there. and you've produced documents saying so. I haven't seen those documents. Have you any evidence of that?
Yeah, the evidence that we've submitted regarding the council's previous decisions are the planning application from when the conservatory was built, and that states the number of car parking spaces that there should be. And it also notes that at the time when the conservatory would be built, it would be a benefit to the area because it would reduce the noise impact of the beer garden on local residents.
I see. I think you may have misunderstood what was there, so I haven't got any further questions. Thank you.
I answered the second part of your question. We also have submitted a statement from a manager of the pub who was there from 1953 until 1993. And it is her statement that has informed us that tables have never been allowed by the council on the Norman Side Road, and specifically the tables on the Burr Road side were allowed by the council.
I think she said that there haven't been any, not that they weren't allowed.
Can I just intervene here? Obviously, the planning process is wholly separate from the licensing process, and obviously we're looking at the licensing objectives. Whatever the issues with planning is obviously a separate area for the council. Obviously, I wanted to just clarify because obviously we are looking at the 4 licensing objectives here this morning. So I just wanted to obviously make that clear to obviously the subcommittee this morning.
Thank you.
And
I don't have any further questions.
You don't have any further questions you wish to raise. We'll then go on to whether any of the interested parties have any questions they would like to raise. I don't know if anybody has any questions they'd like to raise to the applicant for the review.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think so. So we'll move on to Gillian Wood. Yes.
Just a quick one. Maybe you're going to come on to this, but I can't stay on the call that much longer. I've got to go to something with my children. Is there a what is the permitted decibels, and has this new fixture gone in excess of what is deemed a reasonable neighbourhood noise? What is deemed a reasonable neighbourhood noise?
I do, but it won't recognise it. I think there's poor
The applicant to answer.
Obviously, we're not acoustic specialists, and we don't know. I have actually asked the question if there was a decibel sort of boundary to what is acceptable or not from the council, and was told that there isn't anything stated around that. From our perspective, the decibel readings that we've taken record up to 4 times the level of noise inside our properties, and that's based on 10 decibel increase being considered double the noise, and 15 decibel increase being considered triple noise. So that's all I can tell you from my perspective. I feel like the council may be more suited to answer the rest of the question.
Thank you. We'll then move on to, if there's no further questions, have any interested parties got any further questions? Don't think we have. So we'll move on to councillors. I just obviously have my question, obviously, as chair of the committee. This area was used previously, I understand, for parking. Did it cause any particular problems when it was a parking area, obviously, in terms of the noise, given it is up against, a residential area?
No, not for us. The applicants and nearby residents have lived in this area for anything from 3 years to 24 years, and we've never experienced a problem. The car park, it's a stretch to say it's a car park. It's a very small patch of land that is just off the pavement. It can take 4, sometimes 5, depending on how they're parked, because there's no lines to allocate spaces to cars. And there's been absolutely no problem with that whatsoever previously, to my knowledge.
And obviously, just got a question for you. I was obviously going through the representations, and I saw a representation from the director of the Hastings Court Residence Limited, Mr. Duncan, who lives opposite this area of opposite the pub in Hastings Court, who said he's spoken to the tenants and that they've experienced none of these so-called noise problems. Why do you think that is, that they've obviously had no problems, given that they are directly opposite the premises? Do you think it's only impacted on some people, given they are straight across the road from it?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I have spoken to two of the residents of Hastings Court. One of them agreed to be named on the letter that we wrote to the brewery outlining all of our complaints on the 14th of May. He lived in flat 1 of Hastings Court, which overlooks the pub. His exact words to me were that, yeah, the noise is a bit intense, but he said the main problem is that people sat there could see directly into his flat. So it was on that basis that he agreed for his name to be submitted on our letter. I also spoke to the resident of flat 4, Hastings Court, and her flat doesn't overlook that side at all. It overlooks the car park of Hastings Court, which is at the back of the property. So she wasn't interfered because her property doesn't overlook. She has no windows on that side of the road at all.
Thank you. And obviously, I've got a question to Councillor Galea as well. Obviously, residents have expressed concerns, but was it only some residents have expressed concerns, not all residents?
Yeah, so as I said, it's I wanted like an independent understanding, so I recently door knocked, and literally it's the adjoining residents of Norman Road and the ones literally facing. The other side of Norman Road past the Berg, I don't know if you've seen the layout of the roads. The corner house, they are affected, but then after that, the rest of the residents went and actually used the space, because once the sun is gone in their garden, they will go there. And then the Berg mostly, apart from as a few residents that are close to from the back, like Graham Piper, the ones that we spoke to didn't have, they weren't affected.
And obviously, as an elected local councillor for Wandle Ward, have you ever raised any direct queries, member inquiries about noise emanating from the Sultan as a result of this area?
Yes, I have, because obviously the residents had contacted me saying they had the issue and they wanted to understand. They weren't getting responses from the from the channels that are available to them. So I did raise a query. And I also asked a separate query about whether planning was required for these seatings.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'll now move on to Councillor Hall. Councillor Williscroft, is there questions you wish to raise?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I understand there's still room for one car to park next to the seating area. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And also there's planters which seem to have some quite small plants in them at the moment that were installed at the time when the seating was put in. I'm just wondering if I could ask the landlord whether there would be any scope for improving.
Can I just have the opportunity? You'll have the opportunity to ask the landlord in the second part of this. It's obviously now just to the applicants at this stage.
Beg your pardon, I'll withdraw that for now.
Yeah. I'd like to ask can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Williscroft.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Councillor Williscroft.
Yeah, not quite sure who should I address this to, but is the new seating going to be a permanent fixture even in the winter months?
I think that's probably more a question for the licensee, and obviously there will be an opportunity thing. At this stage, it's obviously questions to the applicant.
In terms of, as applicant, if I can just reply, in terms of information that we've been given, yes, this is going to be, the seating is going to be permanent as we've been told.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
If there's no further questions, we will then move on to the respondent, the licensee. So obviously I'll invite Gary Robinson and Alison to address the panel.
I'll let Alison address the panel first.
Yes.
Okay.
No worries.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you, Alison.
Obviously, it looks like we've been, quite hard-hearted in this, but we did take this complaint very seriously. I and my husband, the chairman, live in Devon. When we had these complaints, we came up right away to investigate. I'm very familiar with pub gardens. I used to live opposite a pub. And I know that there isn't a significant amount of noise. And I think possibly the noise here is because it is so very quiet in this area, because I'm here now and you can't hear a thing. But I've made a statement, and I stand by that statement in spite of what's been said. And the matter of the car parking is quite interesting because it isn't being used by our customers because they can't. It's always being used by other people. I don't know who they are. And that is why I did suggest that possibly this dispute is more about car parking, but it may not be. And I'm sorry if I've been unfair. I don't think I've got a lot to add to my statement. As far as the benches are concerned, the intention is for them to remain, but I think it's highly unlikely they'll be used during the winter. I think last night even, there was only about 2 people used them. I'd like to hand over to Gary, who's got more day-to-day knowledge of the whole issue. Thank you.
Gary.
Yes, just to add to what Alison said, the sole intention of the benches as a collaborative idea between the brewery and myself was to give people more outside space, and primarily to enjoy the good weather. Everybody that lives on Norman Road knows that corner, that's the part of the street is a fantastic little sun trap. It was, and that is the reason for the 9:30 p.m. curfew. The sun is down by then, and the long-term intention is for the benches to remain in situ, but to be mothballed. They will be covered, so people can't use them in the winter months. It's there for people to enjoy this, the good weather, an additional area for the pub to, and it also future proofs our establishment for any future pandemics. They may be few and far between in my lifetime, but we really did struggle with the outside seating situation previously. And it future proofs the business, which everybody seems keen to see thrive.
Thank you. I'll now allow, is that the end of your statement? I'll now allow the applicant to ask any questions. Sally or Graham, have you got any questions you wish to ask of Gary or Alison? Or Councillor Galea? Yes.
I'd like to ask a question. I wonder why we received a letter from the brewery suggesting that we could no longer contact the landlord of the Sultan regarding consultation, and what they feel would be the solution to this particular problem experienced by those residents who live nearby.
I'd just like to answer that in part, if I can. At that time, I was being solely held responsible for the decision for the seating and the box planters, and it wasn't my sole decision. I referred this to the brewery, and they took the complaint on as a company, rather than, or because, as I said, at that time, it was me that was receiving the anonymous letters and the anonymous phone calls with complaints, and then it went to the brewery. And I'll the rest of to Alison.
Hello. The reason that we took it over was actually I was rather concerned about the amount of pressure Gary was being made. He was getting anonymous phone calls, anonymous letters, and I thought it might be better if it's a bit more at arm's length. But I wrote a letter and I had no response. Instead, there was a response to the directors of the company. So nobody suggested consultation with me. And I would have been happy to meet with people. But I did actually investigate the complaint, and I spoke to regulars, and there didn't seem to be much in it, I'm afraid. But I would have definitely met for consultation. Nobody suggested that we should consult. You didn't reply to my letter, and you wrote to the directors instead.
Well, I think possibly, we're asking questions at this moment in time. So I won't make comments really as to the nature of your answer to the letter that we sent. One question I would like to ask, though, and that relates to the use of the car park. And it really bothers me that you think that, the particular residents who have made this application are the ones who have probably been misusing the car park at the pub. I have to say that I have parking space on my house for 4 vehicles, so certainly I've not even been involved in that. And secondly, I'd like to ask the question relating to the response that you gave, and that is that, as far as I'm concerned, you didn't make it clear that you were going to be available for consultation. Is that right? Or am I wrong?
I wasn't actually aware that Gary had made the suggestion of consultation.
So in actual fact,
there was absolutely nothing to stop. There was absolutely nothing to stop Ms. Reed, who's a solicitor, a mediator, in getting in touch with me and arranging consultation.
Well, the nature of your letter actually suggested that actually you were not open to consultation.
Well, I'm sorry if it gave that impression, but the problem was Ms. Reed had written to us saying there was no possibility of anything. She said our customers weren't rowdy, that there was nothing we could do except remove the benches and reinstate the car park. And if I apologize, I never suggested that anybody who was writing that letter had been parking there.
Okay.
But there was constant reference to car parking, problems with car parking, right, and also always being asked to reinstate the car park. So I couldn't understand the complaint except in this was and I did say I apologise if I was wrong, and it was open to come back and say you were wrong.
Okay, can I ask how many anonymous letters you received?
I don't know. Gary will be able to say.
In total, there were, I think, 7 anonymous phone calls from withheld numbers that weren't prepared to give a name, and I received one handwritten letter, one typed letter, yes, which was anonymous, which were just posted through my front door. And I think there was a third. There was the third one that I received actually had a name to it, and the first person to declare herself as one of the complainants was Fiona Reed, who did ring me to say that she was who she was and where she lived. So yeah, there were.
I don't think the applicants can actually account for the anonymous phone calls. I mean, I certainly can't. So, you know,
I think when we've obviously examined this part in terms of the anonymous phone calls, is there any further questions you wish to ask on anything else? I know obviously Councillor Galea has indicated you wish to ask of the respondent. Councillor Galea, I'll take you now, please.
Thank you. Whatever the outcome, you know, of this licensing, I don't know exactly what it will be. I guess the question would be, I think specifically Gary, because he's there, you know, most days. Would you be happy in sitting down with the affected residents, even if so assuming there's no restrictions given today from the licensing? I think there's like a certain animosity that's come out of obviously the situation, and you know, the residents, and I'm sure you have, you know, have been uncomfortable in the past few months because of this conflict. Would you be happy even just to like try and sit down and resolve that conflict and that feeling, and just, yeah. I mean, again, depending on the resolution today, potentially having also more conversation, you know, with the residents. Do you understand? It's a bit, sorry, it's a bit convoluted, my question. Do you understand, Gary?
I think it's obviously in terms of liaising with residents about this issue, you know, regardless obviously the outcome of this hearing today. Would you like to respond, Gary or Alison?
Yeah, I mean, we'd be happy to, you know, to meet.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further questions they wish to raise? Before we go on, is there any questions the interested parties would like to raise with the respondent? Obviously, the licensee, obviously, as you are an interested party, you can have the right to ask any questions if you so wish.
None at this time.
No, it's not. It's for others. Obviously, people who've made representations, you know, in favour of the Sultan or against. They have obviously the opportunity to raise questions because they are an interested party to this hearing. It's part of licensing processes. If there aren't, we'll then move on to councillors. Is there any questions councillors wish to ask? Councillor Hall, I'll take first.
Yes, I just wondered whether the landlord would be open to the idea of planting slightly more substantial plants in the planters, especially the ones that are next to where there's a car parking space, to help baffle some of the noise. It's just an idea that the plants that are there look fairly spindly, to be honest.
Yes, yeah, there is that option, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got a question, obviously, in relation to the time when the outside area is not used. Obviously, you have a cut-off time of 9:30, but obviously that is not set in stone. It's something obviously that is, you know, voluntarily. Would you be willing to have a condition about 9:30 in use of outside areas?
Yes, just bear with me.
Hello. We have no intention of using it before 9:30, but we're a bit wary of having a restriction, only because of it's a difficult thing to say, but I can just imagine somebody, as Gary has told me, somebody could just sit there. There could be a photograph taken. We've had quite a lot of complaints about this pub recently, and I'm worried that we could be vulnerable to being back here with our license being up for review just because some random person sat there.
I think it's obviously in relation to the use of that, you know, voluntarily, it's use of that licensing area at the moment, obviously, for people to have drinks. You know, you can sometimes get people who do sit on a bench, but obviously there are many licensed premises which do have restrictions in terms of the use of that latter area. Obviously, you have a voluntary code, but you know, you may not in the future be the people who are running that pub. That's obviously why I pose that question, given if there is concerns from local residents on that issue, whether that should be whether there would be any willingness in terms of having a cut-off time in terms of people drinking on those benches.
Yeah, I understand Alison's concern, but as as the day-to-day manager of this, we take all of our licensing responsibilities really seriously. And the 9:30 cut-off was a self-imposed thing on my initiative. In all good consciousness, I couldn't have people out there socialising till 11:30 at night when the pub, is closing.
And can you just clarify in terms of the use of your outdoor area, is that for all of the pub, or is your obviously garden open till closing time? Just if you could clarify.
Well, it's just that the new seating area we have cleared by 9:30. The rest of the pub closes 11 p.m. We stop serving at 11 p.m. 20-minute drinking up time.
And is the outdoor area on the other side used as well after 9:30?
Yes, the garden at the rear is, and the 3 benches on De Burgh Road side is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Williscroft.
Yeah, I've just got a question for Gary and Alison. I understand, Gary said about the new seating being mothballed in the winter. Is Gary and Alison, are they willing to shorten the availability of the seating in the summer by a little bit? Not the whole summer, but maybe shorten the summer season when the seating's availability to placate the
I think when would you call that? When would you say is the end of the summer? It's a bit of an impractical. There are some people that that won't sit there when it's not sunny. It's.
Okay. I'm just asking because obviously that's when it's going to be most noisy according to the residents. So I'm just trying to think of a compromise here. I don't, I want you to carry on that, but I just thought maybe it might be a solution to shorten the summertime when you have the new seating. That's all. It's just an idea, So that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all.
Do we have any further questions, Councillor Hall? And Sally McCutcheon, you've had your opportunity already to ask questions. Was there some clarification you wish to sort? Can you, on mic?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it would be possible to ask a question. I know the time for applicants to ask has passed. Is it okay for me to ask one more question of the...
I will take one more question, yes, but obviously you've had your opportunity. But yeah, I will take one question. I will take that discussion.
I understand. Thank you. I just wanted to ask if you have in mind a date for the winter where the tables will be mothballed. I'm just sort of wary that the tables were in use from April, and just wondering if you have a date that for you the winter will start.
As I say, that's impractical to propose. Once the plan is to buy covers, fixed covers for the seating. As to committing to a date, that's impractical. We can determine when summer ends. Like I said, the benches are there for the good weather while the good weather continues. People aren't going to want to be sat out there on a rainy November day.
Thank you. I think there's any further questions from councillors, Councillor Hall, Councillor Williscroft. We'll now go on to interested parties. Obviously, we have a number of interested parties. Is there any interested parties here who wish to make a statement to the committee? I've obviously got, I think it's Andy Coles is one of them, just bear with me, but Andy Coles, Paul Davidson, Andy Wood, Gillian Wood, Robert McCann, Ed Rayfield. Any of you wish to indicate you wish to speak now in relation to this? Just obviously raise your hands. Andy, do you wish to, Andy Coles?
Can I unmute? Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a colleague here that actually made a submission. He's with me.
Yes.
Is it possible for him to speak?
Yes, Friday made a submission. He can make, yes.
Peter Duncan's his name.
So Peter Duncan made a submission. I understand it's opposite in terms of Hastings Court, aren't you? So I'll obviously allow Mr. Duncan to address the panel.
That is good. Yeah. Do you want to sit here? Just coming on stream.
Yeah, there was a couple of things. Mainly the privacy situation. They say that the applicants are frequently watched by customers sitting in this area. How exactly are they watched?
I think that was more a question. Obviously, now is the opportunity to have statements. There was questions earlier. I can only take statements at this point, and obviously the other parties will have the opportunity to ask question of you.
Sorry, I didn't know when.
Yeah, I did try to, but I can only take, because obviously we've had that part already. It's now statements time about obviously we wish to make a statement as an interested party to the hearing.
Yes, I well, again, it's a bit of a mixture with question and a statement. The father has said that he could hear noise when the tables were first there. I don't hear any noise at all, and he lives further away from me. In fact, our building's in between his and the vicarage.
Okay, if you don't wish to add anything else, obviously I have the opportunity for people to ask questions of yourself. Does the applicant wish to ask any questions of Mr. Duncan? Does the licensee wish to ask?
Mr.
Yes.
Is that the gentleman who's just spoken, Mr.
Yes. Is there any questions you wish to ask?
Where, can you tell me where is your bedroom situated and where is your lounge situated? Which area does it face? Does it face the car park?
No, but I have my doors and windows open.
Where does it face though? Does it face the Sultan?
No.
Right, so it's facing the opposite way.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I can hear is because the noise of the Sultan actually ricochets from the housing on the other side of De Burgh Road. And I said, if you'd heard what I'd said to begin with, that I heard the noises when the tables were first put up, when lots of people were sat there. I occasionally hear it in my bedroom, but if your bedroom and your house faces in a different direction, well, and that's why I can hear it, probably you can't.
Fair enough.
Any further questions that wish to be asked?
Any, Paul and Peter?
No.
No, we've concluded, thanks.
Okay, and does the respondent wish to ask any questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Graham and Sally at one point.
Sorry, it's not the questions now. You had the opportunity earlier. It's obviously to Mr. Duncan, whether you wish to ask any
Sorry,
questions.
I'm begging your pardon. Sorry. No, I don't.
I think and does any of the other interested parties want to ask any questions? Andy?
No, thank you. No, my statement stands. Thank you.
I just obviously, is Mr. Duncan still there? It's obviously I've got a question to him.
Yes. Yeah.
Obviously, I've read your representation, Mr. Duncan, You're obviously a resident of Hastings Court.
Yeah.
And in your representation, obviously, you said that you didn't have any other complaints from people of Hastings Court in relation to the Sultan.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, but can I clarify one thing?
Yes, if you could, yes.
The owner of flat 1
Yes.
is not around at the moment, but he actually does drink in the area in question. And he said to me that he was asked to put his name to the petition or whatever. And he told me, well, he volunteered that he declined because he said he had no problem with it at all. But unfortunately, he's not around for me to verify that.
No, that's and just obviously.
Can I just clarify? We have never organised a petition.
Okay.
Well,
this is not a campaign. This is not a campaign.
Thank you. That's helpful. And I think obviously I have one further question. Obviously, as a nearby resident, do you think obviously the Sultan does have any issues in terms of outside noise at all?
No.
No. Thank you. Do any of my colleagues wish to ask Councillor Williscroft or Councillor Horlock wish to ask any questions of Mr. Duncan?
No questions. No, thank you.
No, thank you. Well, at that stage, I think we will move on. Bear with me a moment. We'll move on then to the respondent, to the opportunity to make concluding statements without introducing any new evidence. So that's obviously the licensee, Mr. Robinson, and Alison as well.
Hello. Yes, I'd just like to, obviously, I'm sure your legal advisor would have already advised you, this is a matter of public nuisance, so it has to affect the community as a whole. In our submission, the applicants just haven't made their case out. They have had a bit of an increase in noise, but I'd say it's fairly minor. It's just they live in a very, very quiet area, so you'd hear anything. But they did buy a house opposite a pub. And the other thing I think is quite important to say that there still is COVID about, and we are providing a safer area for some of our customers to sit and commute and socialise, because we know that the risk of transmission in a outside is far less than inside. That's what I'd like to say.
I've got nothing else to add.
Okay, we'll now move on to the applicant. So Sally McCutcheon, Graham Piper, whether you wish to make concluding statements.
Yes, please. Thank you. Certainly, we feel very relieved to finally have the airing of everyone's opinions. So thank you all for your time. A couple of points that I've noted through today's hearing. I do understand that the main motivation was for customers of the Sultan to be able to sit in the sunshine. But I would argue that this should never be at the detriment of residents who are just choosing to try and live or work or rest in their own homes. The pub has been successful for many, many decades without this seating area. And I would conclude that it is able to do so ongoingly without these tables. More substantial planting would be a concern for me, whilst it would potentially alleviate some of the privacy concerns, depending on exactly what would be considered. There is already one fence on one side of this area, and the two residents immediately next to that fence still experience substantial noise problems. So I don't feel that whilst the planting would indeed help some of the privacy issues, I don't see that it is likely to help with the noise. And the existing cutoff of 9:30 doesn't resolve in any way the many hours of nuisance that we experience prior to this time, including from midday on Saturday and Sundays. I do have a statement just to read out. Like I said, we are relieved that the question of the new seating area is finally under consideration. We refer to our written position statement, which summarises the case from our perspective. We are asking the council to modify and impose conditions on the licence to restrict the outdoor consumption of alcohol and use of the new seating area. We feel it's justified on numerous grounds, but the most pertinent point is the impact the new seating area has on us, as well as the closest neighbours along Norman Road. It doesn't surprise me at all that any residents whose property does not directly face the pub do not hear the noise. This is affecting us on a daily basis, and it's causing a great deal of stress for us within our homes. We're unable to peacefully use our homes as we would wish, and this has never been a problem prior to the installation of the new seating area. A pub that is situated in the middle of a residential area should be required to function in such a way that it does not negatively impact the residents living next to it. There was no planning permission for the new seating area, and it does also appear to be a breach of the terms of the title of the property. We do see that from all the positive affirmations of the various patrons that it's not essential for the pub to have this outdoor seating area in order to be successful. There are other outdoor spaces available for customers to use, including the beer garden and the tables along De Burgh Road, and we're very happy for the continued use of these two areas. The brewery, who were responsible for making the decision according to a letter that they wrote to us, have not offered any solution and have previously denied the level of nuisance caused, as well as questioning our motives for complaining. That's the reason we have not been able to find a solution through our communication with them so far. Given all of these circumstances, we request that the committee place a restriction on outdoor seating and require the brewery to remove the 6 tables that are causing significant problems. We understand it's difficult to balance 2 opposing views, but this issue relates to a significant imposition of our private homes and can be easily remedied without significant negative impact on the pub. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Just before I go on, does the legal officer have any comments they wish to make?
None in this at this stage. I'm sure that I'll give you legal advice in due course.
And does the licensing officer have any comments they wish to make?
No major comments, Chair. As I said at the start of the hearing, this is primarily an issue about the use of the outside tables at the front of the pub. And it's a question of whether you believe public nuisance is being caused, and if it is, then what steps would be appropriate for that. There's been no conditions that are offered up. The licence holder has indicated, and I don't think this is in any dispute in the papers, that they've voluntarily undertaken some measures, but they don't wish to offer those as a formal condition, and that's for quite understandable reasons. If it was a condition on the licence and they were in breach of that, then it would be an offence, and possibly they could either be prosecuted or come back for review. So I understand the licence holder's approach to that.
Yeah. Mr. Piper, sorry, the Reverend Piper.
Okay. I just want to correct Mr. Hawkes. The seating that we're referring to is not at the front of the pub, but at the side of the pub, not the front.
My apologies. I'm looking at this from the plan, and perhaps what I'm calling the front of the pub is the side of the pub.
But it's important for us because we're not complaining at all about the seating at the front of the pub.
Okay.
Thank you. Just before we conclude, I think there's one item which is done. Any declarations of interest people wish to raise in terms of any councillors? Councillor Hall.
Well, only to say that I have been a customer in the pub from time to time. I wouldn't say I'm a regular, but obviously, this would not affect my decision-making ability.
And I would also like to declare that I have been a customer on occasions at this pub as well, but obviously that doesn't affect my decision making either.
Now, does it affect mine?
No, you don't need to make those declarations. So what will happen next is obviously we will consider all the evidence that has been presented to us this morning in terms of the statements. We will also as well consider all the written evidence which has been made to the subcommittee. Obviously, we have had a number of representations that will all be considered in the round in making that determination. We will obviously then make a decision, and all parties will receive a written copy of the decision notice within 5 working days in terms of our determination. But can I take this opportunity of thanking everyone for attending this subcommittee hearing this morning, and thank you again, and I now close this hearing. Thank you very much.